I am not a multitasker. Welcome back, everybody. Artist Journal, April 25th, 2025, broadcasting from the non-space of the mind. My name's Adrian Pocobelli. Right into it here. Happy Friday. As it continues, look at this. The most important thing I'm trying to multitask right now is to plug in my phone after the music finishes so that I can make art on my phone later and have battery. So that's where I'm at here, and I think I've succeeded in this mission. Speaking of missions, so this is part of the Arcadia show. 2600, of course, referring to the Atari 2600. This is by Ex-Mortal. And, of course, there's audio. Let me get the audio. Let's see. There's a lot to say about this. But let's watch. It all comes together, doesn't it? It all comes together. And the power, of many things, the power of collaboration. Let that keep playing with the sound down. So there's a lot to say here, but maybe I can say it in a compact fashion. First of all, the power of collaboration in the sense that I don't know if we ever saw Ex-Mortal, who we've shown a lot of Ex-Mortal's work, but I don't know if we've ever seen Ex-Mortal do video games like this. But of course, being invited for the Arcadia show, Ex-Mortal goes, okay, I'm going to do I think it's the pioneering section of video games. We have Pong, is that Space Invaders? And what's kind of interesting about it is all of a sudden, Ex-Mortal is, I think I remember that parachute game. I remember a lot of these games. I love this stuff. The two-dimensionality. But also Ex-Mortal is then presented with a problem that needs a solution, which is, okay, I got to make work for the Arcadia show, and I'm going to do older work. Maybe I'll do Atari, and then all of a sudden is incorporating video from Atari games, and we start getting magic. We start getting some magic. So kind of almost like what's interesting about this piece as well is it's a bit of a summary piece. Like it kind of summarizes what we love about video games, like in retro video games, whether it's the console itself, almost like we love synthesizers, right? Whether it's the visual graphics, of these consoles. As I like to say, what draws us to these games isn't usually the gameplay. It's usually the graphics over time. Almost these accidental masterpieces of digital art. That's how I've long characterized Ultima 4. And so what's interesting about this is, look at that color. Look at that color, even this logo. This is ad ready, Fifth Avenue, marketing agency ready. This is ready for the big leagues, so to speak. Like if this was on Times Square as an ad, you would be like, wow, that is a Times Square ad and that belongs there. So now we also have another thing going on here, which is kind of the big headline for me, which is traveling through the mediums. Because we have this graphic, video game visuals, retro video game visuals, which I think one of the important things to note is the two-dimensionality. I'm probably making my processor work extra hard here with all of the movement here. But all of the two-dimensionality of the video games, of the graphics, I would argue are part of the appeal. We're kind of back to these limitations creating interesting results and almost styles. The limitations creating styles. And that's what we have with video games. We kind of have a multi-pronged perspective. In a sense, you're looking bird's eye when you see a maze. I think of the person running through the maze. We'll probably see it one more time here. But then we see them kind of like as if we're walking towards them. Like we see their full body, their head. We're not seeing them from above. Same here, right? Now, in painting, in early Renaissance painting, there is something called simultaneous narrative, where you put Peter, the whole kind of narrative cycle of Peter in one space. There's no dividing line. Where you put it all in one painting, and there's a scene of Peter on the left, there's a later scene in St. Peter's narrative in the middle, and then there's a final scene on the right. Here, in a sense, like one more sort of thing, we kind of have with this kind of unique perspective, we have something that I'd be tempted to call simultaneous space, where we have the space of, or simultaneous perspective, where we have the bird's eye view. We almost have the 45-degree angle view oftentimes, but not so much in these older ones. It's almost like we have simultaneously the bird's eye and the forward view. We see that in Ultima 4 as well. In a sense, we see that with Pac-Man here. So just kind of another kind of interesting thing. And why I bring that up is the reason we have that simultaneous space is because of limitation. That's the takeaway here. Not some big metaphysical thing on, and what does that mean about space? And, it is what it is, which is a limitation of graphics. In a sense, the non-3D capabilities created its own situation visually, interestingly. And I think that's part of the appeal. I think there's something about it. There's also the chunkiness and everything. Like you put it all together and it's its own space. It's its own world. Now, finally, so we have this very interesting space. I've celebrated it really with Nostalgia Studies series since actually 2010 is when I started doing Ultima 4 drawings, which are buried somewhere. Maybe I have those somewhere. They're in Toronto. I have friends. One friend has all my stack there, but I did sell actually quite a few. That's when I first started making sales, interestingly, as an artist. Those were the first things, and they kind of sold like hotcakes. I think I sold them for 60 Canadian dollars at the time. Not nothing. And people still will send me pictures of like, it's still on the wall. So that's pretty cool. So final point here. Ex-Mortal did some beautiful work here, and we see actually Ex-Mortal's color and kind of noise and processing, and you put it all together that we've been seeing over the last, really evolve and develop, I'd say in the last 6 months especially, where all of a sudden we're seeing these gorgeous landscapes. We're all of a sudden seeing that now being said after this request, hey, do you want to be in this show? All of a sudden Ex-Mortal takes that, context or process, and then it superimposes it basically on top of this 2D simultaneous space, and we really start getting some magic here, don't we? And I call it traveling through the mediums, but, is it? Because interestingly, these old consoles, you'd put them into your TV. So it's more just processing. It's kind of the magic of effects, right? And of glitch. So there's something kind of beautifully summarizing about this work. And again, because it captures kind of these glitch artists' love of like what I often call the second generation of digital art, artists who grew up with video games, right? And who weren't programming to get the result where, that's the second part, where computers were evolved enough where either they're using a mouse, painting with a computer, as I like to call it, or maybe even here just kind of processing effects. And there's something to be said for effects, interestingly. Just finally on this topic, if you think of oil painting, I mean, what is the effect? Or you think of even acrylic painting, it's almost like the closest I can think of as far as implementing an effect is a medium. It's adding a special medium. So let's say with acrylic, you add the heavy gel and everything, which makes it's shiny, which makes it look like oil painting, but it kind of has its own quality. Some people even like it more. And that's the kind of the closest, unless I'm not thinking of something. But when you think of traditional painting, so it's one of these, and the reason I mention this is it's one of these aspects that separates digital art from painting, and which is a demonstration of this profound jump or difference within the mediums. I used to think, as I've mentioned before, of digital art as simply a continuation of, in a sense, the painting tradition in a different medium. But I increasingly see them as it's not that simple because they're so different. The technology, the processing, so to speak, is so different that I kind of see them more as there's overlap maybe, or there's a shared kind of timeline, but where digital really seems to have its own, it's a new medium, which is stating the obvious, but maybe the implications are bigger than we might think, or at least that I thought. So just kind of, as we continue our conversation here on all things interesting that we can dream up as we stare off, and I could just leave this on for an hour. As you see, what a masterpiece, really. What a masterpiece. The music, it's a true summary and celebration. Absurdity picking this up for 500 Tezos, which these days is a mere $272.75. So nice pickup. After a little bit of an auction battle, but basically one other person. So as we're going to see, I think it's PP Universal, it's a great time to pick up art on Tezos, as we're going to see. And then I think this might have been given to both of the bidders. Nice consolation prize. Because, one to absurdity, one to having fun. So pretty nice. So that's cool when people do that with the auctions. So Ex-Mortal, what a piece. What a piece. So here, Kant, who many of you know has been, a member of this community and watching this show for almost since the start. So it's great to have Kant put together a little gallery show. So I was happy to put this in. This edition of 5. I think there are 2 left. Google ad, Long Tall Sally, as it says here, part of this clothing. So I love doing internet ads here, and I did a few different versions, actually, just for fun. Try out some different colors, because they all become different pieces. Sold them pretty cheap at 35 Tezos each, and Glitched picked them all up, as well as one of the edition of 5. So thank you, Glitched, for that's pretty cool. It'll look cool on the walls. So thank you for the support, and thank you, Kant, for the invite. Here is the show, by the way. It's pretty awesome. Figments is there, who's, of course, Cap'n. There's Ed Woods. I believe Sabato, if I'm not mistaken, is going to put a work in there, too. So really cool to see Kant do a show. Let's get to the comments. So this fun beginning here with Zofia. And so let's go. Okay, Ed Marola, great to hear from you. Cider, awesome to hear from you. Musty Art, welcome back. Just wanted to say time, make sure we're recording here. Just want to say time has been very kind to me on X. So time, also known as Santiago. I'm not surprised. Often reposting and or commenting on my art, and me being a nobody in the scene, dude is an absolute legend for that. You're not going to find a more welcoming community just in general. ironically, there you are on X, than the Tezos scene, because so many, if not almost everybody on there, not everybody, almost everybody's kind of started from nothing. And so people, they tend to relate and understand to the underdog. Let's put it that way. I've made some art inspired by his style, and a few times now, and into the results have been amazing. With that, I plan to make several art pieces inspired by many different artists in the scene in the next few months as creative exercise, including yourself, of course. Also great video as always. So interesting. Cool. Interesting. One thing you want to be careful of is the problem with that strategy, and sometimes it can make sense. You can learn stuff. Like, put it this way. I once put together a news aggregator website back in 2007. And maybe even earlier. I think it might have been like 2004. And it was just a news aggregator website. I was a big fan of the Drudge Report at the time as a media entity. And just the improvisation that was going on there. And what I did, I was like, well, I want to follow the master who kind of created that whole news aggregation genre almost of websites. So or at least an early pioneer of it. So I'll just make it in the same way, and then I'll kind of learn from the master. But the problem with that is, then you start getting a bit of success, let's say, or you start getting some attention, and then you're like, oh, well, this is working. And then you just kind of stick with your copy. You know, I've made all the mistakes here. So you kind of get trapped because all of a sudden you're going, oh, so Musty, you might make some sales, and all of a sudden you're, doing a take on Santiago's work or whatever, and then all of a sudden do you get psychologically trapped? So that is my only concern. Because all of a sudden, and then are you just the person who's doing the, influenced? So what I would say is it's not a terrible strategy in the sense of learning kind of new ideas and new things, but it's also so new. I would also, while you're doing that, also just try out a new software. Just try out new software. Try out different softwares. Try out different things. Try out different ideas. And it's kind of, as I like to say here, we're just scratching the surface of digital art. See if you find a brand new one that nobody's using. Right? Because these things come out all the time. It's like you can't keep up with it. So just like be okay, do a search, and see what's new. And then, what are people talking about? And all of a sudden you find some software that nobody's using and you're making something completely different. Right? So I would just say do that also. And then maybe that's a way of incorporating some of the lessons you learn with that. So with that, and you do want to be careful. Just final kind of point on this. Because some people do start as copying, and it's not great PR. So it's okay to do a little bit like homages, and I haven't actually seen the work that you're discussing, and maybe they don't look anything like it for all I know. But if they look too much like it, then all of a sudden there's going to be chatter, right? And there's going to be chatter, and people are going to be like, oh, who's this person copying so-and-so? So it's not necessarily the greatest PR. People, you have to think about the collector's point of view, or even the artists who are looking for new kind of artists. And they want to be dazzled. They want to be surprised, right? So they want to see something that's never been seen before. And if you're a new name, that's an opportunity to do something like that. So I'll just say, thank you for the comment and appreciate the support. Also, nice response here. On the last show here on X. Thank you for the support again. Canik Zapata. Love Zophi's 2D, 3D experiment. So clever, so much wow. Love that comment. Indeed. Mary Migraine. Zophie Ogor. So definitely Zophie has her legion of fans here. Great to hear from Mary Migraine. Louis JPD. Much goodness in this fresh Artist Journal edition. I was compelled to pause the video and impulsively restock on some more Zophie Ogor gems. Depleted, but happy. Yeah, they're really just unique artworks, aren't they? And they're not easy, I would argue. Like, if you're new to digital art, you might just be kind of want the flash, so to speak, and the dazzle. And these take a little bit more understanding, I would argue, to consume. But as we often see, sometimes those are become your favorite works. Great to hear from you, Louis. Retro Manny, love it. Your shows are creeping over an hour again. Yes, hopefully not today. Those catch up. We're basically more or less caught up here. Interesting point about non-finito art. I have so many. But in this case, it was a resounding finito. It's actually completed, minted, and sold. So very cool. So I guess this work here. And I am taking a massive risk here, always. Let's actually see what... So this is what Manny is talking about. Pretty epic. I don't think I've seen this. But I wonder if Manny misunderstood what I was saying. Because I was talking about the grid, like the sketched out grid, meaning leaving that. Because this looks pretty quote unquote resolved. These are the people that leave comments on this show. Oh, there we are. Okay, my mistake. My mistake. I'm going to leave you at that cliffhanger here, because it's a minute 42. But thank you, Manny. So you know where to find it on object.com. Look up Retro Manny. There you will find Resurrection. Wow, what a drama. I can't believe I never saw that. I might have started the show had I seen that. What day did that come out? April 18th. Okay, so we're in business. So in a sense, I'm glad I showed it. Kind of brand new here. Very nice. Loving the Mumble Boy work. Gonna go check out in the exhibition if it's still there. So Nori. So excellent. Glad to hear. Pedro Jose, coffee and art reviews of Pocobelli. This is what I missed when I was away for a few weeks. Guess I am back again. Awesome. Yes, that is what we do here. Coffee drinkers. That's why I love Paris. Paris, I mean, it's just a bunch of cafes. You know what my favorite part of Paris is? Normal cafes everywhere else in the world, you have a table in the middle and then you have a chair on each side and people face each other. In Paris, the chairs face the street. You'll have two chairs side by side and it faces the street, so you watch the spectacle of the city as if it's like a movie or something. And I adore that. And I'd much rather actually, sip my latte or whatever like that beside my friend like it's a movie and discuss the world. So isn't that fun? Enigmatrix, thank you so much for featuring me again. A beautiful work. And again, the persistence it's awesome. And big success there too. Kills, nice one, Adrian. Good to see you back. Zofio Gore, thank you, Kills. Zofio Gore, Pocobelli's front page. Incredible vid all the way through. Oh my God, thank you, Zophie. Awesome to hear from you. It's always a delight and a pleasure to hear from edgy artists and the people who are starting, who are in the show. So the honor is mine. Mr. K, awesome to hear from you. Primavera Digitale out of Florence. What a show they put on there. Dreamer Mind, great to hear from you. So we have seen, I have left you tantalizingly right before the resurrection. Okay, so this was interesting. So a couple of shows back, of course, we were talking about crypto history, not art history. Pocobelli sees, this is an interesting comment from an Al Crego post that was posting about this. Pocobelli sees the problem here. It's the Anon 4chan crypto culture that's alienating real art collectors, and comparing this to the comic book craze of the 90s is something Cosmo Medici understands. Crypto art is on a similar arc to comic art, but the digital art will continue to rise. Yeah, so interesting. Interesting, and I was there, with the comics in the 90s. It was a mania. And you know what was interesting about that? Was I remember when I was in high school, like comics kind of became nerd chic in the last 10 years, 15 years, 10. When I was in high school in the 90s, like you didn't advertise that you were into comics. It was just nerd. There was no chic. Well, for those that didn't understand anything about anything, but for those of us that did, partake in the comic craze, indeed, we knew how chic it really was. But that's another story. So, interesting. It's interesting to see this resonate. this hot take of mine, so to speak. So thank you for the comment. Okay, this is quite interesting. This is interesting. Artsy. Only 17% of collectors believe the art market meets their needs. Of course, artsy being, contemporary art, kind of the big scene, maybe one of the major kind of media outlets, but they also have their gallery sort of, part of their website where galleries can subscribe and people can buy, basically a marketplace. Gallery marketplace, let's call it that. So this is quite interesting. Only 17% of collectors believe the art market meets their needs. And for those of you that go out to shows, like, put it this way, I wasn't very surprised. And it's like sort of like they're just figuring this out now. Just 17% of collectors we surveyed said the art market caters very well to them. And 18% think that galleries are doing enough to educate and engage new collectors. We also found clear misalignment. Some 46% of collectors said they value educational content about art history or techniques from galleries. Interesting. So education, kind of like this show to a certain degree, is appreciated. When asked about the kinds of experiences and content collectors responded most positively to, however, just 15% of galleries selected this option. So the galleries, there's a misalignment, it seems, is one of the small conclusions we could come to, is there's a somewhat of a misalignment between the galleries and the market and, the consumers of contemporary art or art. The role of galleries in educating and cultivating collectors is particularly important given their centrality. Some 86% of collectors surveyed have purchased art from a gallery. So these are people who have actually bought. Does the art market cater well to you? 17%, yes, very well. 59%, so in a sense there is a good enoughness with 59%. 20%, no, it does not cater well, and 4% other. This is interesting too. What kind of experiences or content your collectors most respond positively to as far as asking the galleries? Exclusive previews, access to artists, that makes sense. And exclusive previews, it's kind of back to that, there's nothing like great social life that, if you start getting invited to wonderful parties because you're buying art, well, that's kind of cool, right? And you're getting your art that you like and everything. Interactive events, online viewing rooms, not much interest there. Educational content. Interesting. So was that everything? Yes. Now, there was another one, which is kind of like the other side of this coin. 72% of art collectors are drawn to emerging art, so also artsy. And let's take a look here. Emerging artists, categorized as those in the earlier stages of their professional art careers, were selected by 72% of collectors when asked about the categories they are drawn to. And I think one of the inferences or conclusions we can draw to this is there's a little bit of boredom with the status quo. If you're looking for the new, there must be some kind of, that's a lot of people. It's not like, because if what's happening is so exciting out there, are you necessarily looking for the new? Let's continue. Galleries echo this sentiment with the highest percentage, 51%, saying that emerging artists are among the two most important categories for their business. So half of galleries saying emerging artists. In terms of the mediums that collectors are drawn to, painting dominates. 85% of collectors say it is among the top three mediums they purchase. Yeah, well, it makes sense. Because painting, at least in the trad art world, if you get a sculpture, there's just a practicality to paintings, and they're kind of, and drawings, I would say, but paintings maybe are more elite, which is why there's kind of a, when people go to a gallery to buy, generally that's kind of what they have in mind, unless you're kind of more, put it this way, are you out to buy your installation? And where are you going to put this installation? Collectors, which categories of art are you drawn to? Emerging artists, established artists, 69%. So that is a vote in favor of the status quo. So I don't want to overstate this kind of tiredness, because maybe people aren't that tired. Galleries, which artists are the most important to your business? Emerging artists are the most important. Established artists, 45%. Emerging, 51%. Pretty interesting. Is that everything? Yes, it is. So just kind of interesting temperature check there, but definitely a vote in favor of the new. And I think a general takeaway we can say is there is interest in the new. I don't think that's saying anything more than what's there. There is definitely interest in new voices, so to speak, new visual voices, so to speak. El Craigo, if people can recognize your art at first glance without having to confirm who created it, you achieve the most difficult thing in a world saturated with images. Very few achieve this, but once it's done, it's forever. Interesting thought. Interesting thought. So I guess, yeah, that's definitely something you have to do as an artist. You have to be recognizable, don't you? Because if you're not, or at least for someone who's consumed your art, they should be able to recognize. Some people will even talk about my palette. Like I have a friend from way back. He'd be like, you may not realize it, Adrian, but you have a certain kind of palette. I'm like, really? Interesting. He's like, and to his point, he's like, I can recognize, which is why I bring it up, your palette. El Craigo, some very few creators do not fit in a category, style, or technique because they embrace many category, style, techniques, melting them all on their own category. Some creators are their own category. They're also known as artists. So another interesting comment here. And it's true. Especially, like, my friend yesterday, I was out yesterday, Mietenen collection here in Berlin. Fancy, chic. You can see it on the Instagram stories for another few hours. My friend was saying, Gerhard Richter, he wasn't feeling Gerhard Richter as an artist. But one of the things that Gerhard Richter did do was do all of these different styles. And was very respected. And wasn't seen, Richard Prince is another example of like, okay, here are the photographs, here are the nurse paintings, here are these other paintings, right? So the important thing as an artist is when you do a new process, which is another way of saying style, is that you're kind of consistent about it and that you can see a real, what you might call a philosophical exploration, or that there is a philosophy, that you can see the experimentation, almost like qualitative science here. It's like, here's the process and we're going to explore what this does and create beautiful, and how it, and can it create beautiful images? Ultimately, that is one of the challenges, one could argue, or what you're trying to do as part of your thesis. It's like, look, if I mix this with this and put this, I get this, and then I can replicate that, and then I can explore that by maybe shifting the variables. Okay? So the consistency within those, don't go crazy, but I probably have about 7, maybe even 8 different series, but I'm okay with that. Because there's a consistency. Again, the Nostalgia Studies series I've been working on since 2011, 2010. Okay? So now it's super interesting to me how it's become like, it's kind of, to me, is most resolved, interestingly, on Bitcoin. Like all of these, like I'd made physicals for the first 8 years of that series, maybe even 10, and then now I apply that same technique, but with modifications. But it's actually quite a similar technique, or I have carried techniques to today. So when I'm making it on Bitcoin, that probably wouldn't have happened had I not started in the physical, first of all. So it's just interesting. So there is a consistency there. So I'm not going to be like, oh, should I release this because are people, so it's interesting. It depends what kind of artist you are as well. And just a final part on this. Sometimes you'll hear sad stories in Berlin of artists who get well known for a certain kind of style, but they have kind of a few different things, but the gallerist always wants that style because that is what sells. And then so they feel kind of stuck, and they also have this issue, oh, well, maybe this other stuff doesn't sell as well. So it's quite interesting as well in that respect. So all to say, more interesting fodder from El Craigo. Here's Cirque. Artists, pivot to your own contract. It's 2025. You can create your own contract in Manifold or Transient Labs in a few minutes and list your NFTs anywhere you want. Now, I'm a big fan of this idea. And the only reservations with Transient Labs, who seem like great people, is it is a different NFT. Like, I think it's ERC 721 TL. So as far as I saw, and so that should be kept in mind as well, because do you need Transient Labs? And put it this way, it becomes a little bit more specific, shall we say, the provenance and the nature of that token standard, if it's specific to Transient Labs, rather than just being a classic ERC 721. And what that means is maybe not every wallet will recognize it. A friend of mine was like, look, it's not showing up in my wallet. I'm like, it's probably because it's a different, token standard, even though it's related, but just slightly different. So all to say, they may need to do that for certain technical reasons, by the way. Like, I think I don't know, but it looks like they're doing additions to Super Rare's 1 of 1. Is kind of my impression. I think they have a marketplace even. So all very interesting. I thought this was kind of funny because we just saw the comment the other day about Shape not being a casino. And then I saw this. Believe in NFT, believe in $Shape. Infinite Garden leaderboard claim is open. So somehow this has something to do with digital art, and I just don't even know. Like, are you on the leaderboard? Claim your shape. And I don't know what the leaderboard is. I don't know how you get on the leaderboard. I have no idea what this has to do with digital art. I do know if you've minted on Manifold, though, you can claim some shape. I have actually done that because I'm minted on Manifold. Hey, if people want to give me free money, that's fine. It was funny. I got $200, $185 from the Zora airdrop. That was great. Some people got a lot, but I don't really use Zora for a couple of years, or at least a year and a half. It's almost a couple of years. But I just put it into art. I just bought a bunch of Tezos with it. And I got some pieces I had my eye on for a while. PP, now is the moment to collect on object.com. This is 100% financial advice. Love that. And indeed, it's like 50% off sale. It's kind of how it feels right now with Tezos being around, 52 cents or whatever it is. Why Sigma Toad? For me, the road will always lead back to object.com. So, I'm all for being multi-chain and multi-platform and multimedia, for that matter. As an artist, I think it's good to be versatile and to not have all your eggs in one basket. But I think a lot of us can share this sentiment. Object.com has done a great job. And there's something to be said for the Tezos community and everything. Like, there is something kind of special going on there. So it's easy to relate to that one. Let's put it that way. Paying through. GM everyone. So this looks like a living peinture. As you can see here, we have a laptop, we have some tape. So I think this used to be Félix Lependre, now just Pendre. Looking interesting. Very interesting. Here's Nicholas Dietrich. This is pretty cool here too. For those that love the dithering, who are kind of up close and personal with the pixel art, very interesting kind of cycling images here, or cycling gradient or cycling pixels. This was quite beautiful too. I saw this at the Prado. This is, of course, Goya. This is Goya, right? And, of course, and you know what's so interesting about this? It actually dovetails perfectly into what Al Craigo was saying about different styles, as well as what I was saying about galleries. I was reading I almost never read those description kind of, write-ups that are on the wall, but I was reading a little bit because it was like, oh, this is quite different compared to Goya's earlier work. And I was reading how once he had basically not quite retired, but basically didn't have to, he was no longer a court painter or something like this. Basically, once he was able to do his own thing, he started doing all these super dark paintings and started doing his own thing. Which is interesting. And one of these works, which just jumps off the wall, this original that Waka's done a brilliant homage to. One of these, it's quite interesting. And they're all right, they're good, but then you see this one and it just like leaps off the wall, which was also interesting. It's not like they were, I don't want to say they were of a different quality, but maybe that is what I'm saying. Like this one in particular, it just captured what Goya seemed to be going for, which it was going more cartoony. It was going more kind of expressionist. It was using these blacks, but then the color, everything kind of collaborated in this one piece to result in the work. And it's kind of another example of, it's kind of back to process. It's another example of being prolific is good. Because the more prolific you are, think of it, again, I'm kind of back to this scientific metaphor. Being in the lab. The more prolific you are, the more experiments you're doing. Quite literally. And the more experiments you do, the more results you're going to get. And the more results you get, some are going to be better than others at the end of the day. So it's worth your while to be prolific. So anyways, speaking of a prolific artist, look how good. I mean, Walk's getting out of control here. Is that at auction? Original 1-of-1 spray painting available via private message. Get it while you can. Object 1, all pieces of Arcadia Pioneers is now listed. And some already sold out. And so if you missed some of your favorite pieces, remember that more will be listed tomorrow and Friday. So today is Friday. Look at how nice. There is Hard Hat Mac at the beginning there. Look at, like, they just did a stunning job on this show here. We're going to look a little closer. That looks like a Limbo, which we haven't, like, and I've missed. Like, I mean, that Ex-Mortal work was in the Arcadia show. By the way, like, what a stunning show. And you know what's interesting here, too? Is, you know, I was at Pinot Collection, and I was really looking forward to it in Paris. And I was pretty disappointed in many ways. And I was wondering to myself, why am I so disappointed in this? And I'm starting to think that it's because of the quality of the work that I'm seeing here. When I start going to, you know, I try and go to the fancy stuff if I can. As far as contemporary art, I try and go to like the most elite stuff I can find. Because why wouldn't you? At least that's how I think. If I have access and they'll let me in the door, why wouldn't I? In terms of like, let's see the richest, greatest, like show me. And what's interesting is how often I'm kind of disappointed, even when I see a show that I go, oh, that's all right. Like that's at least a good show, but it's not nearly doing what this does for me here, which is excitement. There's no excitement in what I'm seeing. Kind of like what I saw at Pinot was the opposite of exciting. And frankly, you know, that's what I saw in the crowd too. Like the crowd was not, I would argue, was not impressed. Nobody was being overt about that, but that was my impression. Nobody was excited there, I would argue. You know, so this, though, I mean, were you excited by that first work we looked at? So just continues to be interesting over here. Let's continue. So here is the show as we start to catch up here. So Cassern. They have managed to get Cassern in the Tezos door here. We have Kurt Hustle Collective. We have all sorts of people. So I can't go through all of these. We have Uxie. I didn't even see the Uxie. We have Suisoichi. So I have about like 5 of these. We have Limbo. I may, you know, bring up a couple of more. Like I don't even have Limbo or Uxie in this show. I don't have the Retro Manny. So forgive me. I can't show everything. I kind of scan and I just go boom, 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 and maybe that. Okay. So it's an awesome show. I think I showed this mech.txt Bronze Age collapse like a year and a half ago, if I'm not mistaken, or a similar one, to start the show when I was over in Sicily. Anyway, so here are a few highlights. This is Sabato as Echo, which is kind of a alias of Sabato, and playing off of Cory Archangel's Mario Clouds. I thought this was quite brilliant. Of course, Cory Archangel's Mario Clouds, which I actually randomly saw when I was in New I'York. Not the first time, but maybe the second time at the Whitney. I saw that show. Kind of like a landmark show at the Whitney was the Cory Archangel show, and I'll never forget walking in and seeing these, I think it was like 3 big screens, or maybe just a massive one. I can't remember. I think it was 3 though, with just the clouds of Mario Brothers going across as if it's just a landscape. And so it left an impression. I quite liked it. And I wasn't really necessarily ready for something like that. But even back then, I could still be like, oh, okay, I can live with this for sure. So anyways, we have a beautiful Sabato after Cory Arcangel's Super Mario Clouds of 2002. So pretty cool at auction for $333, but doing Echo of the Dolphin, which I believe Sabato really loved that. A ROM Corruption. I believe he really loved that video game. Here's Nekogotchi. It brings us back to the Tamagotchi discussion from a couple of years ago, hilariously. So we have a Tamagotchi with a cat. So again, just the color here. Manidal and not a number involved in this. So very cool. Edition of 10. And one selling for 111 Tezos. Wow. These sold for quite a bit of... Oh, no. Maybe on secondary. Wow. That is impressive. Pretty impressive. So beautiful work. These are on Object 1, so interesting. Doom Scroller. So here we have Kurt Hustle Collective. This is pretty rad, too. I've had this music in my head all morning, actually. The video art is just so good in this scene. It's nice and short, frankly. Kind of 90s drum and bass type of thing. Doom Scroller 2025. Going through Kurt Hustle Collective's portfolio or something there. Just awesome. Sega Dreamcast. So this is an edition of 1, a rare edition of 1. Here's Cassern, Alone Tape 01. So I think we saw part of these works in just GIFs that we've been looking at here when we first discovered Cassern. So Cassern, I'm surprised actually at how much, because I feel like I thought these could be broken up into 4 or 5 different pieces, so to speak. But the piece is the piece, as the artist presents it. But you could almost have, this is one piece. This could be a second piece, as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, it's going to be a different thing. Look at this. Yeah. So, all to say, really moving works, aren't they? I love this, too. Almost reminds you of those transitions in video games where you'll see it, like I think a Karateka where it cuts the scene at near the end where the king comes in and the princess, etc. Very interesting. And as you see here, using kind of a Game Boy Color exclusive, so Game Boy Color palette, beautiful. And here's Futurist Tetris, so a celebration of Tetris here. I believe this is Muji. Let me just check. Beautiful. Kind of fun doing the 3D there. It is Muji. This is 177 Tezos. A bid has come on. So very nice work there. Here, so the show is doing fabulously. Pinky Blue with a work. Really cool pixel artist. Often uses pink and blue. At 50 Tezos. Bids are coming in. Very cool. And here's Cal Flemmer. Boss Outfoxed. Edition of 12 for 17 Tezos. And so very cool work here, too. So, again, like, what an awesome show. The excitement is, this show is exciting. I'm happy to report here. So selling out at 10 Tezos, now 17 on secondary. Now, this is part of that Cant Gallery de Cant. This is Figments, a one of one, just picking out one of those works by Cap'n here. So that is 101 Tezos, and you can just buy that straight off the primary. Here is another work by Cap'n, Cap'n.base.eth boot disk. Collect for 0.0012, so kind of cool. Interesting. I've never seen this platform, Mint Bay. Maybe a base platform, not sure. Here's Cream Safa, not sure if we've ever seen this one. But it looked pretty cool. This was Perpetual Stillness Machine. This might be an older one. I'm not sure, but worth recalling what Kareem Safa is up to. A pioneer of the pixel art factory, Koneko. So also out of Japan, more Japanese pixel artists. So just more interesting. Very defined, actually, for such limited, pixels that are being used, a defined style. Again, thinking of El Crago here, look at that. Who's this? Like, you can't even, Rice Cracker. Wow. Interesting. Make sure I'm following them. Here's another one by posted by Ban8Ku. Here we go. So again, very defined. You can recognize immediately who the artist is. Can you recognize this? This is interesting. So this is Hermipe, Neon Cat, and we're just discussing this last episode, which is glitch, pixel art and glitch. As you see here, we have the orange pixels seem to be the original pixels, but then we have this kind of moving, you see red on the left here. I don't know if you can see that. Red on the left and then green on the right. So there's kind of a, color shift is maybe what that's called. So interesting work here from Hermipe. Interesting pixel art in this little cat. I think it's called Neon Cat. I like that title a lot, actually. Another one from Arcadia, Sui Soichi, the Hermit's Temple. So again, this very kind of textured pixel art here, kind of noise textured pixel art from Sui Soichi. Very interesting piece here. Edition of 50, available for $6.60. I might have to pick one of those up. Element Lee, a couple, kind of looks like an old Game Boy here. Interesting, right? And almost made with like text there. And here looks like a Game Boy 2, also made out of text, perhaps. And this is called Text. Nice and ambiguous. Really cool there. Here's Jean Provencher. Very cool here. Again, experimenting with different, amounts of rasterizing. And kind of looks like a tennis player. Love that dot right here. Just looks great. Great color choice, too. Very cool work. Here is... We know who this is. Who is this? Where's the Elna Frederick? Crashlog.dmp. Amazing in the sense of it captures the crash, but kind of forever here. It's quite the illusion at work here. So pretty cool work here. Here's Enigmatris. So black and white work here. Kind of looks like a floral with floral composition with a butterfly, but all in black and white, ASCII, pesky. Here's another one, mushroom. So doing some plants here. I like the white language coming out of the mushrooms there. Looks very cool. Here's Son of Stag. They left instructions, but no one could read them. Cool work here, as you can see. So nicely textured work, kind of cool abstract from Son of Stag, and that's edition of 10, still available. Here is Ed Marola. We talked about art all night, and there's nothing left to say except it's cool. This is pretty interesting. Ed is pushing things as usual. Pushing things forward here, especially this kind of design, almost this patterning that is filling in these kind of masked areas here. And then we see some beautiful, you probably can't see that. I don't know if you can see that. Some beautiful, basically dithering, a very light gradient of dithering here. Worth a close inspection here. So pretty interesting piece. Edition of 1, selling for 100 Tezos and sold. So very cool. Here is another one, edition of 11. And these are sold out at 10 Tezos. So the market healthy as ever. I'm happy to report here, and kind of similar ideas with the patterning being independent almost of the mask. Something you sometimes see in Picasso clothing. Interesting. So playing with masking, it seems. Nice frame here too. The top area being slightly different. Nice colors, too. I mean, it continues to be interesting. Here's Martin Bruce. We have arrived. I don't think we saw this one. So a cool kind of sunset or sunrise going on here. I love the steering wheel, how it just kind of falls apart, breaking apart. So in the test drive series, and look at the big rear view mirror and this brush that's like tracing everything. Very, very, very interesting. Available at auction for 200 Tezos and Desert of Candles. And again, kind of some pixelation going on there almost in the background as well as in the interface of the car here. And you see almost this tracing of the elements. So interesting tracing, I'd argue. Interesting processing. Because you think where Martin Bruce starts on these. Probably starts with test drive, screen. And then how do you approach it? Like some very interesting ideas on how to approach that. Bold. John, Windows Still Life number 5. I think, let's see if this is an older one. I think John has been posting some older work. Nice piece, nice color. Created in April 2016. So very interesting. So making some good money here too. Selling for $67 each. Dan Control, edition of 10. Nice kind of red lighter here. I don't feel like ironing. So again, just juxtaposing different elements from, the furniture of our lives, our mental furniture. I don't feel like ironing, so that is cool. Here's Nov 1914 with a Hans Holbein homage. So cool. This Hans Holbein looks really good. Some of these German ones, German painters, for whatever reason, work really well with some of these gradients. Not sure why. I think I figured out what this is. This is Guantanamo. This is a Guantanamo series. It's called The War by Walk. Interesting. So did September 11th. Remember that? And then now seems to be doing Guantanamo Bay. Interestingly. And so there is probably a figure in orange. Orange jumpsuit. So this sold. You can get Walk for pretty reasonable prices. I don't know if this is going to refresh. Let's not test the gods. How are we doing here? 56 minutes. We're going to be close to an hour. Here's VHS Dream by Tezos, edition of 6 for 7 Tezos. Cool, kind of monochromatic landscape here. Nice piece. Here is Jan Lucas Magone. Kind of a different work for Jan. Fun, interesting work. As you can see, different figures doing different things, running, jumping, and moving. All juxtaposed. Pretty original piece here. Edition of 500 for 1 Tezos each, so pretty reasonable price. Here is Lena Eckhart. Paris, France. Is Lena in France? Let's see. So anyways, interesting piece here. Do we have any info? I don't see any, maybe glitch art. So cool artwork here from Lena Eckhart, as you can see. Almost looks like a canvas, doesn't it? Very interesting. Here's Cider with another animal. Kind of nice processed piece here by Cider. Definitely you can recognize it as a Cider. I'd say the majority of artists here, you can recognize, I don't need to look at the name. I know who this is. This is Santiago, right? Interesting piece here, even trying something different here, but I recognize all this. Interesting Minecraft, again, almost looks like Minecraft, doesn't it? The landscape, beautiful. Love this kind of off-register, almost kind of screen printy situation here. Very nice. I'm loading up the X version because it is much lighter on my computer. Demon Ego with some works. This is on, but the time work you can find on Object. Here's Demon Ego. Cool work on Object here. 4 different GIFs here. Very cool. This is an edition of 5 for 20 Tezos. 2 sold. Here is Glitchtown Arcade, edition of 1, and it's called 8. So a bit of glitch ROM here with some flashing, so I'm not going to leave it on too long there. That sold to KF for only $666. Good deal. And here is Yuran Yakon, April 21st, another stream. So we've seen a ton of these streams come out, each a little different experiment from the lab. So very cool. Very nice piece. That's 20 Tezos. Here is Oblivion Fields. I believe this is on-chain, which is why it probably took a second for it to load up there. But I could be wrong. It doesn't say specifically. But kind of looks like an on-chain work, doesn't it? Interesting abstract, all to say. Let's continue. Here's Kazuhiro Ehira with another animated abstract here. So interesting piece here. Let's continue. Here's Feels. 10,000 views, doing quite well here, 126 retweets. So nice animated abstract from Feels here on X. And here's Xerox on X. I was trying to figure out what these were, but I'll say I love the texture here. Fun piece, and even taking the negative space and kind of making it flash, I thought was also interesting, and cool colors. Doing quite well, 45 retweets. And here is Tami Sankari. Interesting piece. Again, kind of looking like using either Minecraft or Windows elements here in this animation. And do that. And here's Saiko Ihara. I'm not sure if this is a newer one or an older one, but using Touch Designer and the 3D scanner. Pretty interesting work there. And here's Canik Zapata as we hit the 1 hour mark. So we're about to wrap up here. Here's Canik Zapata, edition of 3. Again, looking kind of like a art history reference here, but also maybe using some AI and a whole bunch of different processes at work here. Edition of 3. Here's Skamra, Tezos Ophelia as a man and not dead. So continuing to experiment with Ophelia, beautiful yellow coming in there. Of course, Skamra using AI to affect the color palette, but in a negative way, by removing or by limiting the color palette in certain ways. As Skamra explained on an earlier show, love these brush strokes here, made by the AI as well as the sky. Beautiful work. Here's another one by Skamra. A bird with this wild background. So continues to be super interesting over there. Here's Lily Illo, GM, and as you can see here, kind of one of these double faces. So another cool kind of painting, so to speak, AI painting by Lily Illo. Here's Yoa In with I think this is a newer work, a new AI abstract. There could be some painting in here as well, sometimes collage, very interesting artist. As we move into the physicals, here's Tim Lahan, a foreign domestic. Interesting colors here, nice contrast to the hard edge, and the super soft airbrush just makes a natural contrast, as you can see, especially right there. It's awesome. So also Sasha Bolt. Is this Sasha Bolt? Wow, I haven't seen Sasha for quite a while. So cool work here. Big cursor. Not sure exactly what this is made. Is this acrylic pigment print? Okay, so acrylic, polymorph paste. So interesting artist out of Berlin. Here's Moto Hero. Some cool doodling and some nice coloring in there too from Moto Hero. We've looked at a ton. Here's the finished version, I believe, of Machine's work here. Kind of controversial, somewhat, work of the subject. Look at that color, though. For me, it was the neon orange. It's pretty amazing. Sui Soichi. I couldn't sleep, so I made this. Pretty cool drawing. Nice physical, I believe. And that is your show, my friends. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for the support. Until next time, have a great weekend.